This is Johnny Dosco. Stay tuned for another Score Sheet podcast. Holy Kadelka!
Hello and welcome to another Score Sheet podcast. Happy to say that once again we have Todd Zola of MasterBall.com back with us. Todd's been on a few times and it's always a good chat. Hi Todd, how are you?
Good, Jeff. Yourself?
I'm doing fine. Working on putting our 2013 player list together. They should be up on the website right about January 20th.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's kind of I think people get excited this time of year. New Year's is past. Spring training actually starts in only like 5 weeks. So it's a good time to think baseball.
Yeah, and people are thinking, as you know, that it's earlier and earlier every year. People are out there, they can't wait to get going.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the sports have some off-season activity, but I think there's no question baseball is the one that has the most off-season activity. Free agent signings, trades, winter meetings, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus I know there's other sports going on, but it's at a time when it's somewhat of a lull. You know, football, they have the camp and stuff, but I mean, it is baseball season, although football fanatics, there is only one sport. Baseball, you're right. It does seem to be, a lot more teams, a lot more positions to fill, and there's more minor league, interest in baseball than any other sports too. So I think that helps a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's just the whole thing is conducive, I think, to year-round following of baseball. As you said, there's a lot of player movement. Teams have a lot of positions to fill.
Yep, and still do.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing coming up, of course, once we put up our player list, then all of a sudden team owners have to start thinking about putting their protected list together if they're in a keeper league, or starting working on their draft list, because we usually have our single season drafts start in early February. So this is a time of year where projections, people are kind of waiting for their favorite projection, or a lot of projections are already starting to come out.
I had mine out the last week in November. The rule of thumb is an hour after I post the update, there's a major trade or transaction. It happened with R.A. Dickey. It's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen Friday night.
Yeah, I get that feeling with my player list. Usually, if I put the player list out on the 20th, on the 21st, someone like Albert Pujols will get traded from the American League to the National League.
Yeah, well, that's what's gonna I say it tongue in cheek, but it just feels that way. But yeah, there's still some significant holes in certain teams' lineups, and there's still some certain teams that just have got an abundance, the Dodgers pitching and the Arizona outfield, have an abundance of players. Does anybody really believe that the Yankees are going to use Cervelli and Romine and, to catch, or are they going to, get somebody? So there's still, in Minnesota's outfield, I know they're on a budget, but still. So there's a few situations that still need to flesh themselves out a bit. Red Sox first base with the whole Napoli conundrum. So and these will impact both, especially AL and NL only, but mixed leagues as well, because context, where you play matters with your skills.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing projections, you have to factor in, for one, their home ballpark. There's a pretty big difference between trying to bat in San Diego and getting to bat in, say, Cincinnati. So guy gets traded, you got to figure that into your projection.
Yeah, I mean, just take a look. The perfect example might be Drew Stubbs and Sin Choo Choo. The recent, to trade 1-for-1 center fielder, center fielder. Cincinnati is the great American ballpark. Sin Choo Choo should have better stats than he had in Cleveland, and vice versa. Stubbs, he's going to suffer. Not the speed, but the power might suffer a bit moving into the bigger, the bigger Jacobs Field. So all that stuff. I mean, it's not written in stone. I mean, the other biggie is Josh Hamilton going from Texas to Anaheim. There's conflicting reports out there, how much it's going to help or hurt. I mean, by the numbers, it's going to hurt. But if you sort of map out his home runs and overlay them on Los Angeles' park, you find out you don't lose as much as you thought you lost. So not everybody's going to, it's just not by the numbers. It's individual. One year, you mentioned San Diego. There was a year that Mark Loretta hit like 12 home runs. I think 10 of them landed in the first row, right next to the foul pole down the left field line. But, it's just, there are things, it's a little bit more than just what the numbers say.
Yeah. No, well, a guy like Hamilton, I mean, if he's going to hit his homer 30 rows back into the left field bleachers, that's going to be a home run in pretty much any park.
Yeah, and that stuff, as you know, is measured now. So everything's measured now. So that sort of thing, you can do that sort of thing. You can take the homers and map, put online, put the map over it, and you can see where it goes. You try to adjust for the wind and the atmospheric pressure and all that sort of stuff as well. That's how intense and in depth it's gotten. A lot of this, you mentioned San Diego. We got to keep in mind when we do these projections, both pitching and hitting, that Seattle and San Diego have both got new dimensions.
Right,
and
they've moved their walls a little bit.
Yeah, not just that. I think even more importantly, they made them lower, which is almost as important as moving them in. I personally think that every single park should have an 8-foot fence, because to me, there's nothing funner to watch than an outfielder jumping and taking a home run away. You can't do that if the fence is too high, or like Fenway in right field where it's so low the guy falls into the bullpen. Yeah, so that's gonna it's a little bit of a guessing game. Do you downgrade the pitching in those places just a little bit? How much? It's the same as any new. It's the same if it's any new park. It's a guessing game. That's why you don't win after the draft. That's why you don't crown a champion until October, when the numbers actually are there.
Right, you can draft a team and say, gee, I drafted the perfect team, but you do have to play the games. Well, obviously, most fantasy players aren't going to quite go to the detail of checking atmospheric pressure. But one thing a lot of us do is consider, impact of playing time when a trade's made. For instance, Texas, they've got kind of a full team now, and a guy like Profer, who a lot of people that own him in a continuing league were probably hoping he'd come up and maybe be the starting second baseman or even starting shortstop this year if Andrus got traded. Now they're down there, and they're talking about him having to play another entire year in the minors. So trades definitely affect playing time.
In two different ways. Yeah, exactly. Just so you said, Profar. I had him as a starter. I had Kinsler at first base, and I've since changed it. And I didn't really think Mike Olt was going to do a whole lot, so he didn't really get nailed after the Berkman signing. But yeah, I'm now, I now, unless they make another move, which they very well may, I think Profar will get maybe half a season's worth of at-bats, because there'll still be injuries and they'll still need to shuffle people around and that sort of thing. And who knows? They still may trade for Jay Upton. We don't know yet. But the other aspect, I think I have a player to use as an example, maybe not the best. But after a trade, where you hit in the lineup makes a huge difference. Take Michael Young going to Philadelphia, in the National League especially. Rollins will lead off. Are they going to hit Young second, or are they going to hit him 7th or 8th? Not only is it a difference of 50 to 60 plate appearances, which, is pretty huge. Well, maybe not so much in score sheet, because it's more of a rate than it is a raw number. But it's still, the rate's still important. But, it's gonna alter the dynamic of his runs and RBIs, as well as just giving him fewer chances. In a rotisserie setting, it's going to hurt him if he hits 7th or 8th, because he's just going to get fewer counting numbers. I don't know about, score sheet depends, because like I said, it's his batting average and slugging might not be that different, which is probably more important than the score sheet's setup.
Yeah, I think in score sheet, it's the spot in the batting order is probably a little less important, or their spot in real life batting order, which I don't know, it's kind of I like to think of that as a plus, because it's still the same player. And so you'd like to think when you're drafting him based on kind of his skills, not where his real life manager is going to put him in the batting order.
I mean, there might be borderline players, if you like to platoon, whatever. The amount of at bats that he gets might, you might not be able to use him as much, sort of thing. You couldn't hit him second in your score sheet lineup and hit him 9th in real life, because maybe he runs out of playing time or something like that, sort of thing. Other than that, I think skills-wise, it's the same player.
Right. No, that's right. And, along with projections, we had this discussion I did with a couple owners about Aaron Hill, because he was involved in a trade, and one guy was complaining he wasn't traded for enough value. And it made me think, looking at his numbers, about how much should value last year's statistics versus how much to value, say, his last 3 years' statistics, because he's one of those guys that had a horrible 2011, a very mediocre at best 2010, and then a fantastic 2012. So when you do your projections, do you have a weighting system or something where last year compared to, say, 2 years ago?
Well, there's two directions to take this. Yes, you always have a weighting system, and it's just been shown that the more recent history should be weighted heavier. The classical Marcel's projection system, whether you go 3-2-1 or 10-7-3, whatever it might be, you always weight the more recent performance, is heavier. But this is probably more important, especially with someone like Aaron Hill, is his skills have been fairly consistent throughout this, last year, the year before that. His contact rate and his walk rate, are almost the same. In what's happening is there's a couple stats that I hate to use the word luck. It's almost cliche at this point, but there's some element out of control on a couple of stats. And those are the ones that are fluctuating with Hill. His batting average in balls in play, his home runs per fly ball. Like I said, there is some control. I'm not saying it's completely flip a coin, but he's, a lot of the times the difference in batting average just has to do with a ground ball getting through here, a Texas leaguer, when you happen to hit a fly ball and when the wind happen to be blowing. So I look at his skills more than I do his batting average and such. The power is going to be there. His speed has gone up and down, although he's running a little more. That's another thing you got to consider. Again, with trades, you got to know the tendencies of that particular manager. Will he let the guy run? And he's running a whole lot more in Arizona under Gibby than he did as a Blue Jay. I kind of look at Hill skills, great contact rate, needs to take a couple more walks. So I don't think he'll hit 302, but I don't think he's going to hit the same, 205 that he did as a Blue Jay a couple years ago when his good luck from last year was as bad luck in 2010.
Maybe he just needs me to either draft or not draft him. I, of course, had him in 2011, did not have him last year.
Yeah, the power was down. I guess you could that's probably the big thing, is the power just absolutely disappeared in 2011 more than anything else. So you almost need to look at that as the outlier. And if it's because you drafted him, well, just let me know before Tout Wars this year if you've got him on any teams.
Yeah, no, that feeling we all have once in a while that we're jinxing a guy by drafting him is not really always a great feeling to have. So yeah. The short answer though is you don't just base, when you're drafting players, obviously you don't just base it on last year. You use roughly the last 3 years statistics, but you do count last year's statistics more. Yeah, and quite honestly, even though in the raw number last year's numbers count the most, over 70% of players regress. So you should expect a worse season for 70% of the players, because that's what history tells us. So even though he may have had a great year or a bad year last year, you still need to be conservative in how you think. This is why one of the best areas of players to target are players that had a down year. That it may, especially if it's because their skills were fine, but they just got a couple of line drives right at people or something like that. Yeah, I mean it's kind of amazing how people will get written off after 1 year. For Adam Dunn, for instance, I mean after his 2011, there were people that said they wouldn't trade a baseball for him. That they would never have him again. And batting average wasn't great last year, but he surely helped in major league ability. Hitting all those homers and RBIs and all certainly helped his team.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of revisionist history, how stupid we were, but I think we might forget just how bad he was that year. I mean, it wasn't, it was, the strikeouts were just through the roof, and we didn't know at the time that he was having some issues with his family. We got to remember, these are people too. Everything was better than the next year, and like you said, the average is always going to fluctuate with a guy who strikes out that much. But the power was there. So in a score sheet league with the OBP, you don't care. You just want that. You want the OBP. You want the SLP.
Yeah, on base percentage. Every year, of course, we get new people that come to score sheet, and almost all of them, now that rotisserie's been around forever, they've played at least rotisserie, and now they're maybe trying score sheet the first time. And about the first thing I tell them when they ask for maybe a draft hint is, don't look at batting average. Look at on base percentage, because it's been shown in study after study in real life. It's on base percentage that matters much more, and the same is certainly true in score sheet.
Oh, absolutely. And in the pitching end of it, don't look at ERA. Look at strikeout rate and walk rate. Look at the skills. Oh yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons I actually like score sheet. Rotisserie, to me, it's a different game. I don't care that it doesn't take into consideration. Give me the categories. To me, the challenge is valuing players according to whatever the categories you decide. I don't need it to. I don't need it to match baseball, but I do like score sheet because of that. Because we all want to manage. That's we're talking about baseball. Versus football, whatever. That's you can always watch football and say he should have run. The couch manager in baseball is a completely different entity as far as every pitch, every play. He should steal, hit and run, throw a curve, that sort of thing. Every single play you can sit at your home and be the manager.
Yeah. No, I think rotisserie is a great game also. It's like playing chess or checkers. Whatever the game is, whether it's rotisserie or score sheet, you just have to tailor your drafting strategies or your in-season managing strategies to the actual game you're playing. If batting average is the category in rotisserie and on base isn't, then of course you have to pay attention to batting average.
Yep, just know the rules. As I said, just give me, every time I'm in a league and they have a whole rules discussion, I say to them, you know what, guys, I'll vote for the majority. Let me know at the end of the day what the categories are, and I'll beat you at those categories.
Yeah, that's the key, is to just come in first place, right?
Yeah. Just you guys can talk all you want about which is better, saves plus one half holds or saves minus, blown saves plus one half holds minus gain. I don't just tell me what it is. Let me know in enough time that I can do my rankings, and I'll beat you.
Yeah, well, that's a good attitude. Well, if folks listening to this, if you want to kind of get pearls of wisdom from Todd, which I highly recommend. Todd is he's one of those guys that in expert leagues year after year does really well. Very well respected among all the folks if you go to a fantasy baseball conference or just talk to people in the industry. So go to mastersball.com and check his work out. Todd, thanks. It was great talking to you today.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. We've got our platinum packages now available. We got the projections, like you said, minor league coverage. And if you catch me on a good day, you can ask me a question not on a good day. Ask me a question on our form about score sheet, and we'll answer it.
I think I need to ask you more questions this year. I seem to be on a long playoff drought run myself.
Okay, well, don't draft Aaron Hill.
Okay, that's probably good advice. Thanks again, Todd.
All right, my pleasure. We'll talk to you soon.